Hey everyone, this is RayRob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our podcast. Say hello to my little film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
We are back.
We're back.
This is the last episode of 2024, Rob.
Yes, this is when I quit. This is the episode when I quit.
Okay, fine. This is our 24th episode.
That's crazy.
Whatever milestone that is, we've done that.
This is insane. So 24th episode, 2024.
About to be done.
About to be done. We need one more thing. Things come in threes. Come on, give me one.
24 carat to be eaten.
You are a failure at life.
I'm not good at thinking on the spot.
There's that show, 24.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Put it on in the background.
Is Kiefer Sutherland going to be in this episode?
No, but it's funny that
Damn
you
it.
mentioned that.
Well, it would have been a nice connection if that was the case.
Yes, I suppose it would have, but it's
you
not.
let me down.
Yeah, I can't plan that far ahead. I'm just glad that I have a movie to present to you today.
That's fair.
Speaking of,
Oh,
yeah, how do you feel? Like, what's your general vibe?
I'm surviving. I'm pushing through. End of the year. It's holidays.
Yeah,
you know how
good
that
mood
goes.
overall.
There is a good mood in the air.
Festive.
We're trying.
Okay.
Again, Christmas is right on the corner, so we're trying.
Well, I'm going to present to you a political satire today. We're gonna go there.
Really?
No
Really?
real
You're
reason.
gonna
No
do
real
that.
reason
We're
why
gonna
this
end this
movie
year.
has struck
This
me.
year of all years, this is how we're gonna end. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I don't know if my brain can take this.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to.
I'm gonna do my best. Oh, okay. So I guess I
You don't want to know.
I don't want to ask, but I'm gonna ask. What do you got?
What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
What I got, Rob, you might actually enjoy. This might actually be like a stress ball for you, a palate cleanser to real life.
It better be.
It's the 2017 The Death of Stalin.
Oh God.
You've not seen this.
I've not seen this, but just from the title alone, I am. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a
Great.
satire, though.
Yeah, it's a
It
satire.
sounds like a very serious movie.
It is not.
It's not. Okay.
It is not. It's got a great cast: Steve
Okay.
Buscemi, Simon Russell Beale, Jeffrey Tambor, who's amazing, Michael Palin, many more. You'll love the cast at the very least. Essentially, this is a political satire, black comedy that follows the internal social, political struggles amongst the members of the Soviet Politburo, I think is how they call it,
Okay.
following the death of Joseph Stalin in 1953. Which is,
It sounds
reap
like
for
a
comedy.
barrel of monkeys right there, man. Okay.
I guess in a way, think Jojo Rabbit in regards to
Oh.
how they handle the characters,
Okay.
and we can kind of go from there.
My stress is releasing
A little bit.
a slight
A little
bit,
bit,
a
yeah,
slight
so.
bit.
It's directed by Armando Iannucci, and in regards to like the historical accuracy of what we're about to see, Armando claims the movie was never meant to be a non-fictional documentary of events.
Oh,
That's not what it's going for. It's fiction, but it's inspired by truth and what it must have felt like to live there at the time. And I think that's important to know going in.
Okay. Well, a stressful political time there. A stressful political time here. We're just gonna do this.
Yeah, it's got some themes that I just think would be a great way to finish this year to talk about.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that right now. We're gonna watch our world burn while this world burns in 1953 Russia, and we're gonna see how this goes. But you should do the same because we're at that part of the podcast. So if you have not seen The Death of Stalin, by all means, go check it out. Ray and I will be doing the same, and
Yes, we
I
will.
will see if I still have my sanity when this is all said and done.
You may not.
Right? And we'll be right back with you.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, Rob, we are back. We just visited 1953 Moscow. We'll never have to go back to any type of experience like that again in any form or fashion.
You promise?
No, I can't do that. I can't do that. But we are
I
back.
know
We
you
finished
can't.
watching Death of Stalin.
We did finish
I
watching.
loved
Death
it
of
again,
Stalin.
and we're gonna find out if you did.
Yep, that's why we're here. So we're gonna see if my brain
Now, usually,
can handle
yeah.
this.
Now, usually before we start, we try to think of a question that could maybe direct the combo a little bit.
Definitely. Is satire dead?
Short answer: yes.
Yeah.
It's dead.
Yep, dead as a doornail.
Can't have satire when it happens in real life. So can't be satire.
Yeah. but
So
it's
we
not
need a
that
different question.
Yeah, it's not that interesting, huh? Yeah. Okay. Well, watching movies like this, there's always, whether it's, fiction, nonfiction, whatever, how realistic they're accurate, if you will, they're trying to get. There is this kind of idea of like the myth building of powerful people, powerful leaders,
Right.
dictators, even, non-dictator, people.
Yeah.
But like, I think there's something in that.
There
there is
is.
something in that.
How about we direct the conversation in asking ourselves, is absolute power a myth?
Well, the dictator, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Talk about a dictator. Okay.
Yeah. Is absolute power a
Is
myth?
absolute power
We'll kind of
a
use
myth.
that to kind of guide us.
Yeah.
here. So,
No, I think that's especially with this tale, this yarn.
yeah. A heck of a yarn, I
It's a
think,
heck
in
of
this
a
movie.
yarn.
So I love Act 1 of this movie.
Sure.
Not saying I don't love the other ones, but I love this first act,
Sure.
and especially this first scene
Yeah.
in the concert hall.
Yeah, the piano, the pianist, the concert, the concerto.
Yes,
It's,
I think it's brilliantly
yeah.
written. It's funny. It might be the funniest parts of the movie, like pure like laughing out loud, funniest parts of the movie.
Yeah, there's definitely a clockwork to the comedy in this
Yeah.
especially this first sequence. I mean, and Patty Considine.
Right.
Or Considine.
Yes.
Considine?
However you say it. Yes.
We know what we're talking about.
He's a guy
though.
from Game of Thrones season 1, the king that's
Exactly.
body falls apart.
You mean
Yes.
House of the Dragon?
House of the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. Yes, sorry. We'll fix that in the edits.
No. Your
Yeah.
shame will live on forever.
Yeah, I love Patty in this movie. He displays this nervous energy,
Yeah,
like to a T.
definitely.
And because they're recording well, first of all, he gets a call in the middle of the concert saying, "Call back." in 17 minutes.
He's got to know exactly when
And
17
basically, he's
minutes
gonna be
is.
on the phone with Stalin. And
I wasn't the one on the phone.
Yeah, because he's like, "Well, when does 17 minutes start from when you answer the phone or when you hung up the phone?" He's like,
I wasn't the one on the phone.
"You're no help. Quit saying that." But I wasn't on the phone.
I wasn't the one on the phone. That guy is hilarious.
But as soon as he knows he's got to talk to Stalin, he's just nothing can go right. Like everything is horrible because basically they've already kind of portrayed in the movie. It's like if he messes this up, he will be killed.
Yeah. I think that's really the most important thing about this entire opening sequence is it just sets the tone.
Yeah.
For what it's like to live under Stalin.
Right.
In that time, you're constantly living in fear.
You could be
of
killed at
screwing
any
up
moment.
for the dumbest of things.
Right.
And I think this whole comedy of errors, if you will, that kind of proceeds over the course of this movie, but this sequence specifically just bears that out so well. Because Stalin wants a recording.
Yeah, he ends up
of
finding
a
out
live
after
performance
after the
that
17
they didn't
minutes.
make. Yeah.
Yeah, he wants the live recording, and they didn't record this
Right.
tonight.
It goes out live.
So Patty has to now then stop everybody from
Right.
leaving, and then get them to basically have to do the whole thing over.
Right, but it's funny to me. Like he was like, he walked out and he's like trying to get the crowd to come back to your seats, and they're like, nobody's gonna get killed. Nobody's gonna like. It's like everything has to be
Yeah.
prefaced with nobody's gonna get killed.
Right. If you come back to your seats.
Right.
though.
If you come back to your seats.
Yeah, because he might if you don't.
Right.
It's so, and then he has those bursts of anger. He's
Right.
like, "Come back to, listen to me."
Right.
You know, it's really good. Of course, it gets harder and harder to accomplish the goal. But like I said in the before section, Armando Iannucci says he wanted you to understand what it's like to be there.
Right.
Because this isn't. I looked this up too. Like this isn't actually something that happened. It is based off of like 10 years earlier, like in 1943.
Mhm.
I heard the story goes that Stalin did want a recording. He wanted to listen to it, so they woke up this pianist at like 2 a.m, made her go and do a recording, and he loved it. He paid her like $20,000 for doing it, but it was also like, "Well, do it, and I'll pay you. I'll pay you, but if you don't do it, I will kill you."
Right. Is it money or death?
Yeah. Money.
Money or death.
But so it's kind of loosely based off something that's
Yeah.
close to true.
Well, and I think that's kind of the thing. It's
And that's
like
what the
a
whole
lot
movie
of this
is,
is.
yeah.
You're going to take little kernels of things that of absurdities
Yeah.
that dictators kind of go through because again they're kind of like petulant children
Yeah.
who just want to. They have to control everything. They're all toddlers, and
Right. Stalin. We're talking about Stalin.
right. We're talking about Stalin, obviously. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're all toddlers, and they all just they stamp their feet,
Yeah.
pound their fists on the ground, whatever, throw a tantrum unless they get their way. And
Right.
clearly, this was
Well,
one of those moments.
Before we even get too far into this movie, let me ask you this though: like, to make this type of movie, to make this, quote air quotes, I guess, satire. Some people said like for this movie, it's not fair to do that because it makes light of something that was really serious. Some people feel the same way about Jojo Rabbit. It takes too light of
Sure.
Hitler.
Sure.
Where do you kind of stand on like the use of comedy to keep these characters relevant and
Well, at this
and
point,
there's-
satire's dead. So
Well, yeah.
we already established that. So
Well, what do you think about this lighthearted take at these horrific events?
I mean, I get both viewpoints. Obviously, if you had a family member that lived through something like this, and you were sat down to watch a movie, which, in all honesty, you probably wouldn't. I'm sure if somebody who had family members who died in the Holocaust or whatever, don't typically sit down to watch Schindler's List.
Right.
Even like in that's
that
a very
movie takes it
respectful,
seriously, yeah.
very respectful, serious movie. So you're not going to watch that either. So you're probably not watching this or
Right.
Jojo Rabbit or whatever. I mean, I get the concern, but I do think there is some value in it,
Yeah.
especially because I do think, and again, this kind of goes back to the myth building a little bit that these people, whether it be Stalin, Hitler, whoever, are seen as like powerful
Right.
men. They're humans, and there's a level of absurdity to them.
Yes.
That-
they're not these
yeah.
mythical creatures that almost took over the planet.
Exactly. Like, I mean, again, yes, there's evil to them, but there's an absurdity to that evil.
Absolutely.
And I think movies like this are important in that regard because I don't know if I want to use the term like it humanizes them. It humanizes them.
Yeah.
I'll say that. It humanizes them because that's usually seen as like a way of like empathizing, but
Yeah.
no, it's not that. It's like this guy was an idiot, you
Right.
know? And
Well, yeah, because
it's-
as time goes by, like you can idolize, certain aspects of people can idolize these things about these guys, and there's like, no, remember they're dumb. They
Right.
really were dumb.
Right. You're like, right. Exactly. Like there's, again, just like the absurdity of
Yeah.
it,
So-
and I think that's what a movie like this does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after this concert scene has pretty much set the tone up brilliantly, we actually get to finally meet Stalin and his stooges.
Right.
The stooges are who this movie really centers around.
Yes.
But we
the
meet-
laundry list of stooges.
Yeah, we got Nikki, Mr. Khrushchev, we got Molotov, we got Beria,
We got
Georgy.
no, I think is that
Georgy
There's so many of these
Malenkov,
guys,
yeah.
all these different names.
So Jeffrey Tabor plays.
Bulganin, you got
yeah.
Bulganin, you got Mikoyan. I wrote them down because
Lazar,
I'm not gonna get Kaganovich. Like
Yes.
it's just So there's a lot of these guys, and they're kind of doing the grab ass thing, which I couldn't let it go because in this they're around a table telling jokes, doing whatever but then it ends with Stalin forcing them to stay to watch a Western.
Yes.
And
American Western, American cowboy movie.
An American cowboy movie, and long live John Wayne and John Ford. And I just was like, wait a minute, what? Like after watching High Noon recently, like him talking about the myth of the American, and then watching, I'm just like, holy
they could have
crap.
been watching High Noon,
right?
They weren't, but they
could have been. But it's just, you know, so it's that whole deal where it, again, this idealism. We touched on it in that episode, idealism, and I think that is something that
the powerful man,
right? That's something that dictators just like.
Yes,
it's flies to honey or whatever for them. You know, it's just that they're attracted to that crap.
Yes, they are.
It's pure crap. You know?
Yeah, and you know, the dynamic there is funny because, you know, like you said, you know, they when Stalin makes them stay to watch the movie, they all kind of have to like secretly roll their eyes because they're tired, they want to go home. But they're at his beck and call. They have to do whatever. They only make jokes to make him laugh. They can only ask questions that he thinks is appropriate. Like, you know, but they roll their eyes when they have to do these things because they know he's an idiot, or they know, you know, they don't really like him that much. They have to,
right?
But they have to.
And there's a lot of that, you know, even going back to that opening sequence, you know, when they bring the pianist in and she's like refusing to do the performance again. And they're like, well, we'll get a different pianist, and like, oh, you know, he'll be able to tell. And then one of the guys like, even Stalin, and they're like, whoa, even Stalin, what is that supposed to mean? And like, and then
the guy freaks
out, and she's like, wait, how do you know this place isn't bugged? And they're all Stalin's got great ears. He's got the greatest ears in the universe. He can tell anything. Like it even when he's not there,
right?
You know, and it's so crazy to me that, you know, they feared this, like people fear other people this much.
Well, I think, you know, they do kind of say something about like fascists is you don't necessarily invoke fear by everything you do. You invoke a lot of fear by doing little, but people fearing much,
right?
And that's kind of what Stalin has here. Now they do kind of show that he does do a lot. They're showing them, you know, the kill list basically, where they're kidnapping people.
Obviously,
in the middle of the night.
A massive amount of atrocities. Like, I'm not trying to say that.
Right.
Like,
no,
there's no
either.
reason to fear Stalin because
he
didn't do it. Like, I'm not saying that. But again, it's just, it's funny because, you know, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, you know, Hitler and Jojo Rabbit, where it's like this idea of the true man behind the atrocity.
Right.
And because of the atrocities, most people think pure evil. And I'm not saying that they're not, you know, because clearly they are on various degrees. But I do think that there is just this weak, petulant child
very much
behind
Stalin,
all of these things, where it's what drives a lot of that.
Definitely.
Know, to do horrible things. I mean, children destroy, obviously not on the scale of these men. They're just big children.
Yes.
And they're doing a lot more destruction, and it's serious. It's not that it's not. So.
Yeah. But it's funny because once they finally finish this recording at the concert, the pianist writes a note, a very nasty note that she gives to. Right. Basically, she puts in the recording so that Stalin will find. Sorry, excuse me if I get my dictators mixed up. Every now and
there's
then.
So many.
But she puts this note in the recording, and Stalin does find it once he's handed the recording late at night, and he starts laughing himself silly and croaks.
It doesn't
kind
quite.
of says
he collapses. He collapses, if you will.
Yeah. And it's funny because the guards outside know that they heard something, but they're too scared to walk in on him doing something
because they might get shot. You never know; they might get shot.
Well, they end up getting shot. So there was really no path of safety for them. But yeah, so he croaks it kind of, and then this is where the movie kind of like takes off.
Yeah,
where like now it's the movie becomes the struggle for power. The fight to become the replacement without it being too obvious.
Definitely. Yeah, because, you know, once that meeting breaks up, you kind of find out Molotov is supposed to be on the kill list.
Yeah, that's played by Michael Palin.
So he's supposed to be on this kill list. So, you know, after Stalin collapses and then they find him the next morning, they kind of the news starts spreading. Phone calls start going out to all of these different members of the cabinet.
It's the Politburo.
Thank you, the Politburo, if you will.
But it's their committee. They're basically
the committee. And so they all realize in that moment they got to get there, because what happens when power goes away? There's a vacuum. So they're like, somebody's got to fill it. So
and this is where you kind of get to learn the characters a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Beria is like played by Simon Russell Beale. He's the guy that's like, he's kind of the evil one.
Right.
Pre-Stalin's death.
Yeah.
And then
he seems the most ambitious in that way.
Seems the most ambitious to replace him. And so he gets there first. He immediately starts hiding files and doing some, like, you can tell, some behind the scenes work.
Yeah.
To get some stuff done.
Well, but the funniest part though is when he walks in and the nurse, or the not the nurse, the maid or whatever, servant is like, "Are we going to call a doctor?" So, like, "So you'll get a doctor." Yeah. Like, well,
I am the doctor.
She's like, you'll get the doctor. And it's like, I don't want to be, not so fast. Like,
Yeah.
we'll decide as a committee. Like, and so it's like, it's just, Stalin's just laying dead on the ground. Like, maybe not.
Yeah.
But there's probably a little bit more to that, because they've arrested all the good doctors. But I don't know if that's why. That's why. But then you find out later they arrested all the good doctors because they were supposedly going to poison Stalin.
Sure.
Which
When
maybe they were, maybe they weren't.
They
I
made
don't
up
know.
their excuses for killing
Right,
people.
exactly.
But obviously it kind of feels like Beria's character is trying to get the upper hand here.
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
He's
it's
trying to,
very obvious from the beginning. Well,
he knows he has a limited amount of time before the next person shows up.
Right. Well, like, even like Nikita Khrushchev, like, he's like, get my pants, and like he puts his suit on, pants
Over
and
his
jacket on over his
pajamas.
pajamas. So like
He has
he's like
no time to
rushing
waste.
out because he kind of catches wind because he sees one of the other guys like leaving their apartment building or whatever.
Georgie.
Was it Georgie?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like leaving quick. So he's like, I gotta go. So he knew something was up. But yeah, and then when they all get there, like, I guess Jeffrey Tambor is the literal Malin.
I'm gonna call him Georgie. I think
Georgie.
Yeah.
Georgie is like the actual legitimate next in line.
Successor.
Malenkov. I got it.
Malenkov. Yeah. He's the successor.
Right. He's the deputy. So like he's technically the one that's supposed to take over. So like when he gets there, he kind of like feels like he kind of has to step into this role, but he's a total wet sandwich.
Yeah. What's funny too, speaking of like, minor ways you can get a character to kind of show themselves. Like when Beria is in the room by himself, when Georgie gets there, he's second. He knocks on the door, no answer. He knocks again. Beria is like setting the scene. He's sitting down the couch. Now he's going to make himself look sad. Georgie knocks again. And then Beria says he can come in, and then he comes in. He's the only. Every other character just barges in, but Georgie can't. He's not that powerful guy,
right?
And so he has to knock on the door and wait to be allowed in. And it's. I think it's funny how they show that little, that weakness in some regard. What you could define as weakness. In this aspect.
And a scene like this, I think, really kind of goes to show how they were able to kind of find comedy in every drop of a scene, and I use that word pun intended since I'm going with the puddle of pee on the floor, because like that was just like almost like the ticking bomb thing where it was like everybody had to come in and either almost kneel in the pee because it was like basically surrounding Stalin,
or at least on that side where it's like that was nearest the door, so that's the side you're naturally going to just kneel down.
Like, oh god, there's pee here. What it was like? So that again. Every drop, they were trying to find comedy in.
Yeah, and I love when they're trying to pick Stalin's body up.
Yep.
And like move him to another room, and it's just comedy of errors because like once they finally get to the.
Do you think Stalin's too heavy? That line killed me. Like no, it's a compliment. Like,
he's dead, and they're still scared that something's gonna happen.
Oh my god!
It's just like this thumb pressing down on that they don't realize has been taken off. It's like when the dog won't leave like the house because he's like used to being on the leash or like is never allowed out, but they've opened the doors, he can go run, but he just doesn't know how. It's like that's what these guys are at.
Well, absolutely. And like I said, it's because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about that, like the myth of powerful men. Because even like these guys, they're not Stalin, but they're still in the annals of history seen as powerful men, for various reasons, and like they're just
found it or not
idiots. Right, exactly. Found it or not. They're just idiots. And it's so funny when you kind of run into that because it again, it kind of humanizes them in that way.
Right. Yeah. And I think it, eventually I think it's another funny line. It's very, I guess subtle, but like they eventually decide on how to get a doctor to check out Stalin, and
Right.
they're gonna round up basically all these doctors, and there's input from all of them, and then at the end, Georgie's like, "See, we're better as a committee because it did take a committee to figure out how to get the
Right.
doctors." And I was like, "You mean like not having one person to make all the decisions is working for you guys? Like,
Right.
okay, is that what we're admitting to here?"
Exactly. But this is kind of where the factions kind of form
Yeah.
too, which is kind of a thing. So like when they're out in the woods or whatever,
Yeah.
and they kind of start pairing off, and this is where, the paranoia sets in, and everybody starts looking at everybody else because they know somebody is gonna try to,
Right.
take over this thing.
Yeah.
And,
Beria is backing Georgie because he knows
he's a
Georgie's
puppet.
weak.
He's
Yeah.
a puppet.
And then Krushchev, Nikki is kind of pretending like he's backing. Who was it? Who does he work with? Oh shoot, I have it written down.
Bulganin or Kaganovich?
One of them, yeah.
I can't remember.
Who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But he's working with another one, and
Right.
and again, they're just like trying to figure out how they're going to fill this vacuum.
Yeah.
But then it's like everything is a competition at this point to be seen in the best light.
Everything.
So
Like Svetlana.
yeah, Svetlana, Stalin's daughter, shows up, and then it becomes these groups are in the
Foot
woods,
race.
and it's literally a foot race to hug her first and say, "I'm sorry for your loss" first.
Yeah.
And, there's a multitude of these that occur throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, but there's a great line in that little sequence too. After like Svetlana, they Beria wins that one, and
Yes.
like they end up kind of like ushering her inside. But as Khrushchev's come in, like one of the other guys, I can't remember which one, like says to him like, "Oh, I saw you out in the woods," and he's like, "There's bears out there."
Yeah.
And like, you should be careful. There's bears out there, and Khrushchev goes, "There's bears in here too."
Right.
Like it is just again that another line that really kind of really aptly sets the stage for the entire movie.
Yes. Then not soon after that, like the doctors officially declare that Stalin's not dead, but there is no chance at recovery.
Right.
And then Beria goes into quick action. Like Beria starts enacting all his plans.
Yep.
He's like shutting down the trains into Moscow. He's
Mhm.
replacing the army or
Yeah, because he heads the NKVD security forces.
yeah. So they're getting put all over Moscow. So he basically is taking control of the capital city, subtly behind the scenes.
Right. Because he thinks, okay, this is it. This is my time to, like you said, kind of even if he's not going to be in charge, he's going to control Georgie.
Right.
To be in charge. But it's also a time when they kind of some of these side characters come in as well, like we said, Svetlana, but then also Vasily
Yeah.
comes
his son,
in at this time.
Stalin.
His son, right? Who you get when had some issue with a plane.
Yeah.
There's like a plane crash with like
What
the
plane?
hockey team. What plane? Russian planes do not crash.
Yeah.
Like clearly he's also kind of a drunken idiot.
Yeah.
So
Played by Rupert Friend.
right.
Yeah.
And so all of these people have to like basically come to the house because
Right.
this is like the time when all of these plans have to be made. Now that that they think he's dead because
Yeah.
he has a moment when he's not dead.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And it's really funny because he kind of gets up and he's pointing like
right.
really
Maybe
to
he's picking
nowhere.
his successor.
Yeah. Then they're kind of debating. No, he's pointing at the painting, and the painting's
probably
like,
not.
yeah. When he starts pointing at the maid, it's like, no,
Probably
he's not.
Probably not.
It's the painting. He's pointing at the painting, and then that's them interpreting this painting of like
Right.
a boy
Drinking
giving
milk
to
to
a
a
cow,
cow
and
or
it's like,
something.
the people are the milk and we are the cow or whatever. It's just
Right.
however they want to interpret it. It's just again just everybody just trying to have the best idea or just again come out on top in every situation they can and really you just look stupid doing that.
Well, right, exactly, because ultimately he's dead.
He's
Like,
dead.
He dies. Like but
Well,
Beria
panics.
Beria panics. He's like, "Oh God! Like I screwed up. Like I gotta do so. This isn't good." And like tells the doctor, "Like I'm not going to forget." Like
yeah, because you've misdiagnosed him,
right?
You son of a bitch.
So he gets him out, and then then he leaves the room, I should say,
Yeah.
and then that's when they come out and they're
No,
like, "He's dead.
He
He's
died.
dead.
He just died.
He's dead." So
Yeah.
which really cuts to like one of the most odd scenes in the movie for me, which is when
The autopsy scene?
Yeah, where they're cutting open Stalin's skull.
Yeah.
Like it's such a weird scene because I mean, you see a lot of different kinds of like autopsy movies or scenes in movies, and that kind of thing. But it's just like this, they just kind of like give him like one cut across the head, start peeling his face down, and everybody's just standing around watching, like, whoa, and just like backs away. And Vasily comes in and is like freaking out because his father's dead, and he's like they're taking his face off, and then like finds out the machine is from the U.S. So he becomes like convinced that they're like in like cutting open his brain so they can insert capitalistic ideas in his head or something like that.
Yeah,
it's just so absurd, but it is funny.
Yeah, and I believe part of it happened to some degree. So,
I mean, maybe, I could see that.
But then they take Stalin's body to start to take him to Moscow, and then again they had this competition for which car's gonna be the first one behind.
Yeah. They all try to leave behind the body, and they're like, "Who's going?
Yeah.
Oh, nope,
then,
I'm going."
And then Beria has this idea where he comes out and salutes as Stalin goes by, so everybody else now has to do that too. So as they get out of their cars to salute, he runs back into his car, and now he's the first one out. So Beria wins again.
And then Khrushchev's like, "What? Are we last now?" Like that was, it is so absurd. It's so absurd.
It's just so silly, but
especially because his house is immediately stripped.
Yeah,
like as soon as they're gone, then
it's Beria's men, I think.
Right, like the KV or whatever.
NKVD.
Yeah, NKVD show up and like basically strip the house, remove all of the help, all the servants. They're all rounded up. And all of a sudden, like they're just like shooting people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
kill them all.
Right, just like it's so random. And it's just like, again, it shows you that chaos, like in that power vacuum of that where everybody's just vying and jockeying.
Yeah, and I feel like once they get to Moscow, it's like time has been ticking, so it's like they're a little less secretive about what their games are.
Definitely,
like Beria and Nikki, really, who are like now kind of come across as the ones that are really competing.
Yeah,
and it's funny though because they don't want to make change, right? Because they call any kind of change or any kind of disagreement factionalism. And I love this idea of like another way a fascist can stay in power is talking about any, you not agreeing with me is factionalism. Like, it's putting this label on you, like you're evil for thinking this and not, well, but you're the fascist.
Right. You're the fascist.
But you're making the other words sound...
Lebowski.
Yeah, you're just trying to make this other word sound worse, but it's not. You know, but you're... And obviously, I mean, we deal with that today where the playing with words and labeling things...
like words lose complete and total meaning.
Which is the point, you know?
Yeah, it's absolutely the point.
It's taking the power from the word. So, if that word's less powerful than what you're calling me is less powerful, and now I seem more tolerable.
Yeah. Well, and it also can mean anything.
Sure.
And that's really the point is if you devoid words of meaning, they mean nothing and everything.
Right.
So, I mean, that's...
And they do that here.
They definitely do that here. And then some of the Beria's moves are interesting. Like you find out that like Molotov's wife is alive, which I got a little confused at this point because I wasn't sure exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
And then like I kind of caught on slowly, but Molotov's wife was still alive, and then it's like they were also like then the group also kind of decided at least that they needed to get back in Molotov's graces, which I didn't necessarily understand. Why?
Yeah, it seems like he has some kind of like I don't think the movie explains. I think as you like finish the movie, you see that Molotov like has some sway. It seems like, or like if Molotov's on board, then other people would said like, oh well, then I'm in too.
Right.
So I guess I just feel like he has some sway.
Yeah.
And that's probably why Stalin wanted to kill him or something because he had some sway.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I think you feel that. I don't think you get that till you watch it the whole way through. Because I definitely remember feeling that too. But it is funny though because Nikki Buscemi he goes to Molotov's house and he's trying to win Molotov to his side quickly, and Beria must know this, and Beria must have always known that Molotov was going to be the guy to get because that's why he didn't kill his wife. He was supposed to kill his wife,
right?
But he hid her away.
Yeah.
And so he unhides her and brings her there and brings her back. And it's funny because when they start talking about his wife, and Molotov is just so trained, like, yes, that traitor, that,
right. She was terrible. She
horrible human,
right.
Yeah.
Traitor to the party and blah blah blah.
And then she walks through the door and is like, but all unproven facts,
all
though.
unproven. It's
A lot of hearsay.
charges.
Yeah. And then but it's funny because the Molotov character, like, throughout the rest of the movie, he's never can be truly happy she's back, because he's, again, what we talked about, like, he's still too
kind of
scared.
Brainwashed almost.
Yeah, they're too scared to talk bad about Stalin, even though he's now been dead for days.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. But it's kind of, now that the group is kind of centrally together, even though all the not, metaphorically speaking, not,
sure,
like, but
they're in the same room.
They're in the same room, and they have to kind of like start figuring stuff out. They vote and make Malenkov chairman, just because, again, he's the deputy. Beria wants it because he, again, is a puppet and knows that he can control him. He's totally can manipulate him.
Yeah.
Like Stalin killed the status quo and rebuilt it, and all this like crazy stuff that they kind of
word vomit.
Right. And it's such an interesting, again, especially with today's political climate that we live in, like this, the way that they kind of talked about the past with Stalin, like the things that they claim that he did, right? Like, in all of these things, and like Beria kind of like, oh, I'm gonna do this, we're gonna release prisoners, and we're gonna do all these things, and it's like, okay, and clearly, as you find out, that wasn't his idea. As it actually kind of was Nikita Khrushchev's idea,
right?
And obviously he feels like he's trying to gain the sway of the people,
right? Even
though he is the reason why a lot of the people are in the situations that they're in, because it was the things that he pushed for and policies that he pushed for Stalin to do that kind of put all, there's a lot of death, a lot of destruction at the hands of Beria, but now he wants to kind of reframe himself. Yeah. And I think he's, using Malenkov to do that.
Yeah, he's doing a good job at it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Right. But yeah, it is funny. Like, we talk about that word vomit. It's because, like you said, Stalin killed people, and he took the people out, and that was radical, and that was very liberal of him to do that. And but now the radical liberal thing to do would be the opposite, and that's and Stalin would love that because it's radical and liberal, and that's what he was about. It's like, you're just tying these words together to make it make sense, but it doesn't. But
exactly, but make you mean. Reality doesn't exist. You kind of detach from it. You can make it mean whatever you want. Exactly. And that's kind of, I think, exactly where they are at this moment.
And I also loved in that voting, it's like, when Georgie's being voted in as chairman, he's like, yes, and then, and Beria will be second. So everybody, raise your hand to vote. And they're like, well, those are two separate things. And he's like, well, yeah, they're two separate things. Well, I think we should vote separate. It's like, but the way they tie is that he ends up saying, fine, they can vote separate. So it's me and Beria for second. And they're like, well, but we all they're voting once. So I don't know. It's funny because that, again, very political. I think that resonates is like they tie so many things up into these bills or whatever that you really don't like. You're voting for one thing you like, but a thing you don't too. You can't separate them. You're not allowed to separate them. They have to be voted on as a cluster.
Right. But then, but I think the kind of kick in the rear in this scene is when Khrushchev gets relegated to funeral duty.
Which ends up, I think, helping him.
I think it does. In the end, I do think it helped him. I don't think they realized they were helping him, but I think it allowed him the ability to make the moves that he makes by the end of this movie. Yeah. But it's funny how things kind of stop almost instantly in this movie, almost in a comical way. Like the firing squad scene, where like they're like going down, they're like, shooting each guy, and like one guy's like, "Hail Stalin" or whatever, and he's like, Stalin's dead. And Malenkov's in charge now. But then like somebody walks up and like, I'm like, oh, okay,
killings have been stopped.
So they just stopped, and like the rest of the guys along the wall are just kind of standing there like, okay. And they just walk away.
Once the order's given, it cannot be.
And then they go home. And like one guy goes back to his wife or whatever. And like it's so interesting.
Well, it was a funny little tie-in because like, the NKVD or whatever forced this kid to tell him where his dad was. Right. Which of course the kid had to say, the kid's like, well, you're going to kill me if I don't. So my dad's on the 3rd floor here. Right. Well, that's the dad that got saved in the firing squad. He comes back. That is that. Okay. Yeah. That makes so he comes back to his son. His son's looking at him like, sorry, Dad. Sorry, Dad.
But that's how it is. Again, like in a situation like that, it's how they turn the citizenry against each other by like, oh, you're you have to turn this person in or otherwise you're gonna die. So you turn that person in, but then like something switches and that person comes back and it's like, oh, you turned on me, you little son of a, like
Sorry,
so,
Dad.
yeah, it's I think that again they were able to embody a lot of that kind of stuff throughout this movie in little ways, which is really great.
Yeah. So eventually we get to the funeral of Stalin, which is, historically a kind of a thing. Tons of people went and saw him and stuff. And I guess where the movie kind of starts to turn is essentially Beria lets bishops back into. That was another thing. So he stopped the killings.
Right.
He released prisoners. He's allowing these bishops in. All these like things that were supposedly going to be Nicky's ideas too.
Yeah.
But now Nicky's had enough. So basically his breaking point is he's saying orders the trains to be allowed back into the city.
Right, because obviously, with the NKVD kind of like having control of the city, it's very clear, and obviously clear to Nikita Khrushchev that Beria is making a power play. Having his guards, because he controls them, kind of monitoring the city, using them as security, which we kind of skipped over, I think, because there's actually another character that gets introduced into the mix, like when we're leading up to this, and that's Zhukov.
Yes.
The head of the army.
Right.
And he's really upset because he doesn't like the fact that the army's kind of been taken out of the security for the city.
Right.
That they've really been sidelined in for the NKVD. So, and he's what's the guy's name?
Who plays him?
Yeah,
Jason Issacs.
Yeah, Jason Issacs. Thank you. Like he comes in, he's like very like bigger than life, almost kind of bigger than everybody else in a way. So, and it's kind of how what you maybe would think of a military man like this, especially the head of the Russian army, really comes in like a whirlwind and is just like pushing people around. But he's upset, and so I think that's what makes it easy for Nicky to kind of get him involved, which is obviously ultimately what happens.
Right, because, like I said, Beria's had the NKVD behind him, Nicky's had nothing behind him, but now he can get the army behind him.
Right.
And, I mean, there's some other stuff that happens. I don't think anything that's, maybe if we skip over, it's not, it's crazy, but, essentially once Nicky's got the army, now he wants to get, he's got to get rid of Beria, basically. He's got to eliminate Beria.
Yeah, he knows he's the main. Yeah. The main.
But again, because everybody's scared of factionalism, it has to be unanimous. Everybody's got to be in, or nobody's in.
Exactly. So Malenkov is the squeaky wheel who, like, they're all like, is he in? Georgy is in, and they all want him to be in, and he's reticent to take part in anything, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Beria has suckered up to him, so it's hard for him to say kill him. He doesn't really have a good reason to want to necessarily.
Right.
So they kind of use this once Nicky opened the trains, there was this thing where the NKVD ended up killing 1,500 people. 1,500 and people now it's like, well, who's that going to get blamed on? Is it because they were told not to allow people in the city, but the trains were supposed to be stopped? Well, Nicky started the trains. They didn't tell the NKVD, so this like perfect whirlwind of miscommunication has led now to the death of many people. And so it's whose fault is it? Is it Beria's or Nicky's? And this is really the one time Beria just doesn't win.
And not only that, I think this is the first time up to this point where you see Beria not like really lose control. Like he melts down like more so than he had at any point in this movie. Like even in the parts when when Stalin came back for a second or whatever, and he seemed to be kind of spiraling just a hair. Like he still kept his composure pretty well. Like this is the first scene when you could see that Beria really might lose. Yeah. In his mind, and he really, and the big thing was that he reveals that he has files on everybody.
Yeah, he almost like jumps the shark a little bit.
I think that was his big mistake.
Yeah, he basically starts to try to intimidate everybody, and they already know they kind of have this half scheme to kill him anyway. So it's like, yeah, you're just kind of confirming that,
right? Like we have to, because if you don't do it now, you're gonna come for us later. So. Yeah, it was a very weird choice to admit that in such a brazen way, which showed that he was desperate.
Right. I kind of have a note here: losing power creates desperation, and that's where I think, again, like you said, Beria feels it slipping away, so he panics.
Right.
And he makes his first wrong play. Now, I will say two things I actually want to say. One, another great funny scene where Beria's like, "I've got stuff on all of you. But Georgie
Right, like
can
he said, all
somehow
of
finds a way to
you.
semantically say, "No, I stood over. I was standing over there." He said, "All of you." He said, "No." He said, "All of us, including you." He's like, "No, no,
He
all
meant
of
all of
you. He wouldn't
you,
do
not
that.
me.
He wouldn't do that to me." You
Yeah.
know, and I feel like a lot of again, relative, like people have a funny way of when they listen to their political leaders. I'm talking about Stalin here. When they listen to political leaders, tell them that bad stuff's going to happen to them. They have a funny way of in their mind saying, "No, it's happening to everybody else, not
Right.
me. You
Exactly.
guys, not me."
Exactly.
But the other thing I want to ask you is, at this point in the movie, I always have a funny like, I feel sad for Beria here a little bit. I'm like,
Oh,
in a
interesting.
way, I kind of find him not like my mind treats him as a protagonist here because he is releasing prisoners, he is stopping the killings, so it's like, well, is he trying to be good or is it all fake? So when you watched this first time through, did you feel it was all fake and you never felt sorry for Beria, or where did you stand?
It's actually a really interesting thing because I one question that I didn't ask in the when we were talking about maybe how to frame this kind of this
Question.
the question for this episode. One thing that I was going to ask was who's the protagonist of this movie?
Right.
Because I think that's a very valid question. Is who is the protagonist
The
of this
people.
movie? Who are you rooting for
Right.
here? And I think that's an interesting point to point out because I think the answer is at different times it's all of them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I think you kind of like there are glimmers with each person at different points in the movie, and maybe I think with this one. I think at this point in the movie, for me with Beria, it may come down to Svetlana because earlier she comes to him and asks that he bring back somebody named Alexei,
Her dead boyfriend, basically.
her boyfriend, and just like he brought back Molotov's wife,
Right.
and he's like, I don't know, like
He's dead.
Well,
she knows he's. But I'm saying in his brain, he knows he's.
Well,
dead.
I don't think so because he may have known because at this point in the movie is also where he does tell her that yes, he is in fact dead, but he had died in a attempted prison escape, but it was like years earlier, so maybe he knew even earlier when she had asked. But either way, this is when he reveals to her the truth. And I think I will say between everybody, he may be the one who cares about her the most.
Maybe the most genuine.
Right. So I think in that regard, it might endear him to the audience, at least to a certain degree, more so than like Nikita Khrushchev or whoever.
Yeah.
Because obviously he has a scene with her too earlier on, but that one feels much more fake.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could get where you're coming from. I don't know if I don't know if anybody really is truly in the end the protagonist, but I get where you're coming from.
I do think it's movie magic because the movie repeatedly shows you that Barry is not a good guy. Like
no, absolutely
all
not.
the stuff he does. He does a lot of evil stuff toward women. But like I said, I still feel like I just think it's your gut instinct as a movie watcher to root for somebody.
Yeah.
And if you start to see everybody pile up on him, I'm like, I guess I'm rooting for him not to die because I do actually think the protagonist of the movie is the people, and you're like, who is going to help the people of this country that are being suppressed that we've watched? And I'm not sure we ever know which one will.
It's like we've talked about before with Hitchcock, where Hitchcock says, whoever you write the movie about is the person you're going to root for. If you're writing a movie about, jewel thieves, who are bad guys, you're going to root for them because that's who the movie's about. And I think there is a certain degree to truth, a degree of truth to that. And, I think this movie is a prime example of that because none of these people are good. They've all done terrible things. They go over it constantly throughout the movie. They all say horrible things about, things that they've done and gleefully, celebrating it. So I agree, but again, you kind of find those moments to connect to a character, no matter what.
I don't even want to say connect, but you feel sorry for him.
Well, I mean, that's a connection. Yeah. I'm not saying
we're not supporting him.
Right? No, definitely not. But but a connection is there's a lot of different ways to connect to a character.
Sure.
And I think that in this moment, for me at least, kind of seeing where you're coming from, it's through Svetlana.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as the movie progresses, we basically get Stalin's actual funeral, and then basically the kidnapping, trial, and assassination of Beria really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of funny how it unfolds so quickly because, again, like we said, they needed Georgy to agree, and he never really does. Nikki kind of tells
He just
everybody
tells
he does.
everybody he did. Well, again, he's a wet sandwich. They all know he's a wet
Exactly.
sandwich.
Well, I think this is the growth, and this is where you start to see the change because Nikki has had enough.
Definitely.
And he starts talking to Georgy the way that you would never nobody would ever talk to Stalin.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's calling Georgy a wimp. He's calling Georgy, whatever, basically a wet sandwich.
Right.
and he's telling him, you're going to go through with this. Be quiet. This is the way it is.
Yeah.
And then that ends up how Nikki ends up talking to Svetlana too. And, like I said, it ends up with Beria getting killed. And it's funny because I love when
Press the button.
Yeah.
Press the button.
Then the army comes in. And I think it's so funny though because, when they have this trial of sorts against Beria and they read off his atrocities and they're plentiful and horrible, and everybody in the room is so like shocked to hear and appalled to hear like what he's done when they've all done the same
They've
thing.
all done it.
They're all just as guilty.
It's all fake. It's a fake trial.
And that's
it's literally a kangaroo court.
Yeah,
It's a true version of that.
Yeah.
It's thrown around too much in modern society. That's what that is.
Yeah. This kangaroo court was not as good as the one that we saw earlier in that horrible film you made me watch.
Pink Flamingos.
Pink Flamingos.
Go listen to that episode.
That did have a better kangaroo court scene, but this was a good one too. But again, I just think, in politics, it's really easy for them to blame others who have done things that that other people aren't sure you've done. So I can blame you for it because you don't know that I've also done that too.
Right. Exactly. So he's obviously sentenced to death. They shoot him. They burn him. It's kind of the end of that. And, Nikita ends up sending Svetlana away, but they're keeping Vasily because he's insane and they can't trust him to be anywhere else. So they need to keep him there.
There's 3 quotes almost like back to back to back in this last like scene and a half that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So one of them is, once they burn Beria, it's, now we can turn the corner, put this bloodshed behind us. When this is Soviet Russia,
Right?
the bloodshed's not going to stop.
Not going to stop.
Svetlana, when she looks at Nikki and she says, I never thought it would be you.
Right.
Which I thought was, a little Godfathery, but
sure.
And then one of the very last lines when they say, "Can we trust Georgy?"
Can you ever trust a weak man?
Like
it's so poignant.
Yeah. Can you ever trust a weak man?
Yeah.
It's pretty much how they end the movie. And then just kind of recap the future because Georgie's in control, but we quickly find out 3 years later, Nikki takes control.
Right. Yeah. He kind of pushes him and Molotov out and kind of becomes the chairman. Well, because it said they go by committee still, at least for a few years.
Yeah.
And then they kind of pushes everybody out, and then he becomes like the full-on,
whatever
chairman.
And that lasts, I think it said, 8 years, and then he gets replaced.
The final shot of this movie is so good.
Yeah, at the concert hall, back to the concert hall.
Right, back to the concert hall, and they're doing, like you said, they're doing the future, whatever.
Subtitles on the screen or whatever.
And he said they talk about him taking power and then him being overthrown. And a guy like behind him in the seat behind him, like 2 seats down, looks down at him at that moment.
That's
that's the guy that overthrows him.
Yeah.
Like it's just so good because again, it goes to embody everything about this movie.
Yep.
Is you're always a target. Like
exactly.
Power is just a cycle.
Yes.
And it's horrible in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that is kind of where we wrap up this movie. It is it's something that I like it every time I watch it a little bit more. I think I get it more.
Definitely.
It's
I can see that.
as poignant as ever. Every time I watch it, it seems like it's more poignant.
As ever.
Which is horrifying and great, but as a movie going experience, but I don't know. We got to ask some questions. So, Rob, I asked you this question to start this podcast or this part of the podcast. Is absolute power a myth?
Well,
what do you think? Did this movie help clarify that at all?
I mean, it's interesting because I think that there's actually the movie makes arguments for both. Yes and no. Yes, because as we said, after Stalin dies, there's still very much that shadow that looms, and they're afraid. When they're carrying his dead, quote unquote, dead body, they're afraid of offending the fact that he's heavy.
Right.
I mean, and stuff like that, and even kind of the way that they now, granted, some of this stuff is used as manipulation. Like we're talking about, like the factionalism and like what Stalin would or wouldn't want or whatever. Like I think some of that stuff is more vapidly used by some of these guys.
It's a weapon.
It's bad faith, yeah, but so it's still, that lingers, that looms. But the entire time this movie is about somebody that's seen as one of the great dictators of history, and just the crumbling of his legacy when he's gone, and these people that just the vultures circle and pick the bones and find the power, take it for themselves. So I think absolute power is kind of a myth. I think there's always going to be a bigger fish.
Right.
There's always going to be a bigger fish, and I think that's the folly of the quest for power. Is there's always going to be a bigger fish, and I think we see that obviously now in our political climate, the way that it is. This quest for power it's lustful for certain people,
and it leads to more and more absurd action to top the action before that was absurd.
Yeah.
It is funny too. I think Stalin. Speaking about his absolute power, he knows the power that he held over those people. While he was in power, but he doesn't know that the fact that they all think he's an idiot.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like he thinks that they all think.
Most of them don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly my point. I think that he thinks that they all think he's great.
Right.
That they want to watch cowboy movies with him. That they want to eat dinner and laugh with him. When it's just all a joke. It's just butt kissing because they just know that you're the guy in power now.
Yeah.
But you won't be forever.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Well, I mean, and I think about we talked about the jokes from that joke scene. One scene we didn't mention that it just popped in my head and I loved it when we were talking about it is when Nikita Khrushchev and his wife are going over what jokes worked and what didn't. And again, like it kind of goes to that like fragility of guys like this, where it's like if you don't laugh at their joke, they're gonna get mad.
Right.
And is that power? Is that power? That seems weak as crap to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's the stuff that really kills me is the way that people kind of look at powerful men, and kind of and what they classify as power anymore. A recent record that came out with one of the great lyricists of our time refers to some of these people as the greatest minds of our generation because it's like, greatish.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, you see them as, you think that there are these great men, these great people doing these great things, and really they are just thin-skinned little boys that are dying for people to like them.
Yeah.
Or it's insane to me. It really is. It kind of drives me crazy a little bit, which is why I said I wasn't sure I was going to make it through this movie
which is
with
why
my sanity.
Which is why I did have to prep you before we started this. Sorry I had to end the year this way, but I did have to. I think you know why. But let's end like this. So even though this movie is triggering, did you like this movie and would you recommend it?
Here we go. Center. Center. Did I like this movie? I loved this movie.
Oh, great.
I loved this movie. It was everything I want from political satire, whether it is dead or not. I would rank it high up there with the greats, Dr. Strangelove, The Great, In the Loop, The Great Dictator, which is the great political satire of our lifetime. Well, before our lifetimes, but you know what I mean.
Generations.
Not my generation either, but yes, it is so poignant. It's so good. It is everything satire is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And while it is hard to watch because again you see the mirror image of in the modern real world, it's those things that we need those things.
Right.
We need those things because people forget, as we've clearly seen. People forget.
Exactly.
And I think that, this is a way, satire can be a way for people to understand the past in ways that, to kind of counter argument for the, kind of what you had brought up earlier about, people taking issue with serious things being, shown in such a, a light-hearted way. I think there is something to be said about a understanding and presenting it in a way where people can truly kind of understand it. And I do think satire has a way of doing that, because I think comedy has a way of doing that,
right?
Of connecting with people
agree.
on deeper levels than people will give it credit for.
Yeah.
I think off that list that Doctor Strangelove for sure. But The Great Dictator.
Yeah.
Or I think of Charlie Chaplin's amazing speech
Listen
in The
to
Great
it a
Dictator.
lot.
Yeah, I mean that right there. It's a movie that is obviously seen as a lighthearted, tramp film, but that speech is as relevant today as it was then.
Yeah,
and,
almost 100 years ago.
Right. So I think that there is something to be said about satire done well.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It has to be done well. And this absolutely falls into that category.
Great. I'm really glad you think that. I agree. I think it's important you have to expose people to these ideas, and comedy movies just are going to have the potential to hit a bigger audience to do that. And so I agree that I think our audience should make sure that they are exposed to this movie as well.
Absolutely.
So I hope they've watched it if they haven't.
All right, we're done with Death of Stalin, but before we get out of here, Ray, what have you been watching?
Well, not to bore you to death, but one thing I would say will not bore you to death. I finished season 6 of What We Do in the Shadows. Did you finish yet? You did.
Same.
Good. What'd you think?
It was okay.
They tried a little bit of an overarching story.
Kind of, yeah. I felt like it was a show that needed to build to something, and I guess it really didn't feel like it was. And then at the very last episode, I feel like they kind of snuck it in just a little bit. Yeah, I really feel like they relied a lot on Nandor and Guillermo, where they end, and that be the arc at the end of the story, which probably makes sense in the long run.
Yeah.
But it was a show that was definitely out of gas.
Yeah.
But it was still enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, they try new things, a little, kind of new things, but like you said, I still feel like the season arc, air quotes, is kind of it's always Guillermo starting something, but then he comes back to the crew. He's,
right.
He last year he became a vampire, and then by the end of the season he's not. And this year's he's going to go off and be a successful businessman. By the end of the year, he's not.
Right.
So Guillermo is such a good, strong character.
Yeah.
Or he was.
Right.
That they're just using him for putting the whole weight of the show on him now.
Agreed.
And everybody else is just this funny little side piece.
Right. Well, and then they brought in that new roommate.
Yeah, for an episode.
The old roommate. Right. But it felt like that was going to kind of be the thing. It was he's going to take up the mantle of taking over the world, and well, maybe this is going to lead to some kind of confrontation at the end, and then nope, monster just kind of takes care of it.
Yeah, I mean they kind of weave throughout, but very.
I mean, the Warriors episode was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't fault them for that. It was a fun episode, but everybody in it is fantastic.
Absolutely.
They're all fantastic. They were fantastic from beginning to end. It's very rare that you get a cast with that much chemistry. And it just, like I said, I feel like they were just kind of out of ideas.
I kind of feel like I know, after 6 seasons and this being so in love with the show, I just know the characters so well that everything they do isn't necessarily funny anymore, because I know what they're going to do already.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just know them so well. It's not funny. It's what I expect.
Right. I even saw Taika, I think, had a quote this week or something that basically where he admitted, I think the show went on far too long.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Give us a good ending and let's get out of here.
Yeah. So, I mean, at least it's over. They called it good. We're done. So I think that's, we'll give them credit for that.
Oh, is it done?
I thought it was done. Is it not done?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't say the ending felt like it was done, but maybe it is.
I thought it was done.
I would not be upset with that.
Yeah.
But I'll take your word for it. I'm not sure.
I'm gonna do it.
Do a quick little.
I'm gonna Google it right now.
Do it.
Yeah, series finale.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
That was it.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
I thought it was.
Overall, I'm still going to say I love the show.
Yeah.
Like I said, maybe a season 2 or 2 too long. Or they should have just left Guillermo a vampire and gone from there. Definitely. But, overall love it. Still recommend people check it out if you've not seen it.
Would not hate on the show.
Now, my other recommendation that I finished, and I'm going to have to give this one of the highest praise recommendations I can give.
Oh,
I
boy.
strongly recommend the show Shrinking on Apple TV+. It is really, really good.
Really good. It's a Harrison Ford, right?
Harrison Ford, Jason Segel, and a bunch of other characters that are turning into like monster, like awesome characters on the show. Like really turning into a great ensemble.
Has he forgotten Sarah Marshall yet?
No, he's trying to find his new Sarah Marshall, essentially.
Okay, so that's what the show is about, is him forgetting Sarah Marshall.
The show, to explain the show, would be sound so like a downer. Like,
God.
To give a synopsis of what the show's about would be horrible. Nobody like, I'm not going to watch that.
Don't do it.
But it is really, really good. Harrison Ford is like.
I know of him.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a good show when Harrison Ford is like actually trying and acting in it, because like he hates everything, right? Like he's just famous for just hating everything. He's actually trying in this show because it's a good show.
Okay.
Like it's so worth a check out. It's a great show to watch with your spouse. Like I think everybody would love it. I really, really enjoy it.
Fair enough.
High praise. What about you? What have you been watching?
I've not watched a ton, I will admit. As we said, we finished What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
We're kind of partway through Dune Prophecy, which I don't want to get into too much because it's still going on. We'll wait till we finish it.
I'm watching it too.
Yeah, so we'll wait till that finishes. One movie I did watch amongst the Christmas movies, which I have been watching quite a bit of. I watched Watchmen Chapter 1. The animated Watchmen.
I watched 10 minutes of it.
I did the same thing at first. I watched like the first 10, 15 minutes and I ended up turning it off. Partly because, obviously we're both very huge Watchmen fans of the book, fans of even the movie, even though I don't like Zack Snyder very much.
I love the motion comic a lot.
The motion comic is great. Like it's great. It's a great book, a great property. But I felt like, and you probably turned it off for the same reason I did. Like first off, the pacing felt very fast.
Yeah.
And so I guess that it is kind of following the book in that way, because it is a little somewhat fast, I guess. But for me, the real immediate turnoff was I just could not connect with the guy voicing Rorschach.
Yeah, I hated the opening monologue. I could read this. I read this better in my head 1,000 times.
Right, it almost kind of sounded like a guy doing a bad Rorschach impression, and I'm just like, and I don't know if that's because I just have.
No, it's because that's what he was doing.
Right, Jackie Earle Haley. Like I don't know if I just have that voice in my head so ingrained that I'm just like that's how I hear it, so I can't hear it any other way. But I will say. And so I went back and I finished it, unlike you, because you're a quitter. I decided to finish it, and it did get better.
Okay.
And because I will say it nailed Dr. Manhattan on Mars.
Which
is the huge thing. Like the movie did it fine, which I figured it would, but this really did take the time to do it well. It did some interesting visual stuff, taking advantage of the fact that it's a movie,
right? An animated
movie at that I think you would really appreciate. So I'm going to urge you to go back and finish it, just because I know how much you appreciate that chapter of Watchmen as much as I do.
But I really do love the motion comic version of that too. That was another little hiccup of mine, was that I just couldn't I'm like, I think I would like the motion comic better. I'd rather rewatch the motion comic than watch
maybe
it.
And that's possible. You may get through it and say that, but I that was this kind of a saving grace for me.
Okay.
It ended at a good spot, and I've seen good things about Chapter 2 that I guess is already on its way out or whatever, or whatever. But so eventually we'll I'll watch. I'll end up watching it because I did finish the first one, so obviously I'll watch the second one. One thing, I just haven't watched a lot of new stuff again because I've been watching so many Christmas movies. So I'm going to throw one out because I ask you this every year and I can never remember the answer. Have you ever watched Mixed Nuts?
Yes,
you
like
have.
100 years ago. I used to have it on VHS, but I haven't watched it in, like I said, 100 years.
Okay, well, I'm putting a challenge out to you and to all of our listeners.
Oh boy,
watch Mixed Nuts. It is a Nora Ephron movie, and it was I think the movie she made after Sleepless in Seattle, and it's a Christmas movie that stars Steve Martin, Madeline Kahn, Rob Reiner, Juliette Lewis, Gary Shandling's in it, Rita Wilson. It's
big cast.
But it got critically panned. I think it's like 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I'm not gonna lie is I think tantamount to treason.
I don't know if I want to watch anything lower than 15%.
Well, you should do it. Push yourself to do it. Because I rewatched it this week, and I've watched it every year for multiple years now, and I laugh so hard every year. So I that's my challenge to you. Before the end of this year, we have a year-end episode. I want to see if you can do it. I want you to watch Mixed Nuts, and we're going to talk about it at the year-end episode.
All right, I'll contemplate if there's time.
If there's time, you should do it. But everybody else should do it as well, because I actually Googled it, and there was multiple articles defending Mixed Nuts for how good it is.
Let's see if we're going to argue about it, or if I'm going to join your side.
Exactly. I think it's a movie that's gotten a lot of respect as years have gone on. Kind of like a bit of a cult following.
All right, Rob, I am going to invoke some absolute power.
Oh, boy.
Right now.
I'm getting afraid.
Yes, you should be. No, you shouldn't. This is a cool thing, actually. I want you to make an announcement, or I want you to clarify an announcement we've kind of hinted at, and I want you to do it now.
You're going to derail the normal wrap-up.
Tell her, I'm derailing. I'm taking us off the rails. We'll come back soon to the rails, but we're off the rails now. Tell everybody what our next episode's going to be.
All right. So everybody out in the RayRob listening world, we want to announce our Say Hello to My Little Film year-end special.
Yeah.
Which we are going to be doing. We ended up with an extra episode right here on the 30th of December. So we decided it would be a great idea for Ray and I to take the opportunity to do a top 10 list, where each of us will pick our 5 favorite movies that were recommended to us by the other, not the ones that we recommended, the ones that were recommended to us.
You can only choose my movies, and I can only choose yours.
Exactly. So we will be doing that, kind of going through the list, figuring, letting everybody know what we loved about each episode and why. Kind of give just, a little fun way to wrap up, the school year, the podcast year. But, we'll have some surprises too, so you definitely don't want to miss that.
Absolutely. And then, now let's go back on the rails.
Let's get back on the rails.
All right.
Let's get the trains running back in to Moscow.
All right, Nikki, you got it. All right, but before we can wrap up this podcast, like we always ask you guys to do, is please like the podcast if you can, subscribe to the podcast, review the podcast if you can, and if you do, give us a 5-star review. We're going to one day read it live on air. And even take the time to write us an email at carrayrob@gmail.com. Ask us some questions.
And you can now also follow us on Blue Sky.
Yes.
At RayRob. So definitely do that as well. If there is a comment section on whatever platform you are on, by all means, leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Let us know if satire is dead. I imagine we will see a lot of yeses with a lot of exclamation points. As we said earlier, we will be back in 2 weeks with Nobody's episode. It will be that year-end special we just mentioned, so you definitely don't want to miss that. But also, do not fret. We will be back in 2025 with a brand new season of Say Hello to My Little Film.
A lot of films to expose each other to.
That's true, but also, I almost completely forgot. Next week, we will have one more episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend.
Our third episode
of Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where we'll be reviewing The Toy, starring Richard Pryor.
What a great idea.
What a great idea. The day before Christmas. That is going to be a very special episode. I can already tell. So you are definitely not going to want to miss that. But until then, this is RayRob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some